I'm a mother and an organic farmer, and I also work professionally in one of the leading energy organizations of the world. I'm currently in the global marketing team responsible for one of the most critical brands in the lubricant space. And I think I've had a long journey in my corporate career, starting from a sales stint at Philips. Then I did a full suit senior marketing manager role in a paints organization called Dulux, and now I'm here. I think in each of the roles I've tried to build on the experience that I have learned. So you would see that there are replicable best practices that I bring in from one role to the other, and yeah, that's what I do. I think I've only seen women consolidating their professional careers over the years. I can bring you back to how I started my career. I joined as the first women sales employee in one of the leading MNCs in India. Interestingly, when I joined that office, they didn't even have a women's loo. Yeah, and they had to break up one of the meeting rooms to accommodate a loo for me. And I remember the lead manager of that office, so he was quite miffed. And he thought that these are some of these global practices that are being imposed on him. He told my manager or my supervisor to say, just put her in the back and beyond somewhere, she will never come back. Yeah, so my first stint, interestingly, was in a very small town in Rajasthan called Bhilwara. And I remember the hotel guy was so skeptical about my safety that he got somebody to sleep outside my room every day. So every morning I would get up and just open the door and I would see somebody sleeping out there. But I think that's more out of concern because he's never seen a women out there and interacting with male. Bhilwara is a very small town. I think it's still not as evolved as most of the towns in India. Women do a lot of parda. So a woman in a Louis Philippe shirt and a track pants or a jeans was something very unheard in those times. That's how I started my good journey. Of course, that was not Gurgaon. But when I came here in 2010, I think the city was evolving. It has evolved by leaps and bounds. I would also say the safety level would have slightly improved, but not as much as it potentially can. But from a corporate perspective, I think the fact that I think this is a great time for women in India to be in the corporate space, because the sensitivity of having women man key positions is only going up. Yeah, so I think I'm in the best phase. I'm lucky for that. You see that a lot of organizations have committed that 40% of their lead managers would be women. Yeah, and I think I often hear conversations in my office saying we are shortchanged. Men would say we are shortchanged because you would prioritize a women for a certain role. My own organization, for that matter, over incentivizes a consultant to bring a woman versus a man. So all these consultants who refer people to the organization, they would be paid 2x for a women candidate versus a male candidate. So all that has changed. Of course, Gurgaon is one of the leading cities where the change is manifesting itself, and I'm sure it's followed by Bombay and Bangalore of the world. But yeah, that's how I think it's shaping up well. Just recruiting is not enough. Assimilating them, that's why we use the word D&I. Yeah, diversity and inclusion. D is not enough, we need to do the I as well. I would say a lot of organizations are in the first step. A lot of organization is in a very evolved sort of space. As far as MNCs in India are concerned, they of course doing D very well. They are toggling to also do I would say sequentially better versus how it has traditionally been. For the Indian conglomerates, it could be tough, and I know personally a woman who came from a traditional Indian organization, got recruited as a CEO of another organization, and she really stirred things up. Yeah, and I think after a 2-year stint, one day she was just asked to leave, just because a lot of men rallied and complained and stuff like that. But I think she was only following a board mandate. She came from outside, she stirred things to drive that aggression, asked very demanding sort of questions to the male senior leadership, and they were not very happy or being questioned. So I think it's more in the Indian conglomerate space where the I is still a little iffy, but I think in most of the MNCs the inclusion is very well embedded. So you'll be surprised that I'm part of the global marketing team. We are a 12-member team, we're all women. I've also been blessed to work in an organization where gender equality is just not about lip service, it's about genuine integration. Yeah, my ex-CEO was a woman, my current CEO is a woman, my global marketing director is a woman. I have championed the diversity agenda through and through. My last team in India was an all women's team, and it was quite a surprise and a very different change from the predecessor, where it was an all male team. One of my seniors, he was a Whisper brand manager, and he was the first ever male brand manager for a sanitary brand name. So I think in MNCs, I don't think there's too much of a struggle, or at least from my lens, I haven't seen any. The Indian conglomerate scene is evolving, and I think women do still feel challenged. When I was growing up, I came from a patriarchal family. Yeah, for my father, it was not critical to educate me. But over the years, I think he's a different man altogether. He's so much in awe of the fact that I can fend for myself, I can support my family, I can support them. There's a very emotional sort of thing for a person who's been growing up in a very patriarchal kind of system. He often tells my brother, learn from your sister, which he obviously doesn't take it easy. I came from a very small house. We had a one room accommodation. We have a house like this. We had a money plant in our house, which just never flourished. And now we have this entire green space. When he comes to this space, he really admires the fact that there is so much openness. It's not about wealth, it is about well-being. He has very special interests, on have I got my promotion, am I getting my increments, where am I in the larger ecosystem. He pretty much knows that I have a female CEO. His aspiration is to meet one of my women CEOs, and he wants to see me as a CEO. So it's almost like he appraises me every day to say oh, where are you. So it's such a different tangent. So I think it's also about men getting exposed to the fact that women can really achieve. He came from a small town. His worldview was pretty much defined by what he saw. Now his worldview is very different. So I think women also need to give others that confidence. I also interact at a global scale, as I said. So I see that women in Asian countries, they tend to overinvest their working hours versus their Western counterparts. So I would see that my peer in London would always say, I'm taking a break, May holiday to spend time with kids. But an Asian woman, a Thailand person from Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia, China, they would really reflect so deeply to even say that I need a 2 days off to attend to my sick child. Because I think it's our upbringing that's guiding us to say that we need to over-index, over-invest to prove our position. And I think, as I said, it's a quantum. It will change. Yeah, I'm sure when my kid, I have a boy, but if I had a girl, by the time she will reach that stage, it will be a very different kind of conversation, because I have not behaved the way my parents would have. So yeah, I think it's a cultural thing, but it's evolving. I remember the first time I attended that POSH workshop after that entire policy change, a lot of men in the room said that this is the scheme to frame us. I can even recall that room and those men around. Yeah, but over the years, I think that discussion has died down, because I do not think a lot of men have been framed. So I think that's the evolution. People treat it differently. A lot of women and men think that this gives them, I would say, the freedom to be who they are, and without falling into the trap of my gender is going to skew my promotion, my progress, etc. So I think it's empowering to some. For them, it's a tick. For some, it's just a tick in the box. But I also hear a lot of cases in Gurgaon every now and then where POSH has been used effectively and not so effectively. Yeah, and I will first talk about the effective part. I think a lot of women have raised their hands to say that they feel coerced, their promotions are at risk, and men make advances which are not comforting to them. It's a positive spin to it, and I definitely see a lot of men whom I suspect in my previous organization would make women uncomfortable, and they are really not at their price positions where they used to be. So that's one aspect of it. But I think I also meet a lot of men, and I know a lot of men personally, and they claim that they have been framed, and I think with 99% of confidence I can say they have been framed. So I think women are also using this smartly. A few women, it's unfortunate for the entire gender, to really raise their hand for promotions where they think they do not deserve it or they did not get it. I personally know somebody, she was put on a performance improvement plan and she was asked to reconsider where she wants to go because she was not fitting in with the organization, not making progress, etc. And within a week's time he lodged a case against the CEO saying, I feel intimidated, he makes advances, etc. So the case has been now ongoing for a year. There has been no proof. The police has consistently asked her to provide some proof. There has been no proofs, but so I think women use it both ways. But I would still think a lot of women feel safeguarded by the POSH clause. POSH is more about sensitivity here. Our women ratios, our gender balance ratios anyway is quite balanced. We have about 10,000 people in India. Out of which around 6,500 to 7,000 are between IT and taxation. Those are our offices in Bangalore and Chennai. They will have 50% women's representation. So not really a very strong case of somebody posing allegations. But in my previous organization, I definitely knew that a woman raised her hand and said and complained to the committee. The committee went around, asked and interviewed a lot more people, including me, because I was also one of the person who was very closely in contact with the person who's been implicated, and I gave my views. Ultimately, I think they did find that the person was at fault, and yeah, he was asked to go. Is he without a job today? I'm now reflecting. No, he's at a very fancy position again somewhere else. But yeah, I think he did take time to reintroduce himself to the corporate circle and find a job for himself. Similarly, I definitely know of a case which is ongoing. A woman implicated a man. I know the man and I don't think he's guilty. The woman has not been able to produce, so it's an ongoing case. Both of them are back at their positions. But then I think organizations are left in a limbo, right? The functions will not really give their best. And there are a lot of conversations in the office on who's doing what. So I think the culture gets compromised if these POSH cases do not land where they need to. Consistently, one thing that has been recognized is that the decision making of women is much better. I wouldn't say much better, but it's much more balanced and it's much more holistic. Yeah, I think it has been recognized by a lot of organizations and a lot of men as well. So I think the vibe of the place is when you have a women manager, I think the well-being, the wholesomeness of the decisions are much better. Yeah, that's how, I think that's the cultural shift. I also think men are traditionally a little, my personal views, they could be a little insecure about their jobs, positions, while I think women are less insecure. If you have a senior leader who's a man in the office, he would expect you to come at 7:30 a.m. Yeah, and he would judge you if you're not coming at 7:30. He would judge you if you have an all women's team. I remember in my last organization I had an all women's team again, and I was the leader. And he came to me and told me that, what if all of them get pregnant at the same time? How will you handle? I said, I will handle, that's my problem. He said, are you sure? I said, yeah. And I told him I need a bit of autonomy in all this. So unless you have serious questions about the capability and the qualification of my team, let's not argue on this. And of course, it was an MNC, he was also supposed to behave in a certain way, so he let that be. But I know that men in senior leadership positions often have this kind of backlog. Yeah, but if you have women and if you have enough women representation in the leadership team, these questions are either not raised or they are settled because of the maturity of the organization and how men have also shaped themselves to the thinking. So yeah, sometimes yes, women also find it very difficult to get along in groups with a lot of women. It could lead to bitchiness, etc., etc. But I think it's all about personal maturity. For example, I would always prefer a women boss any day versus a male boss, because I think the sensitivity, the inclusiveness, the decision making is high quality. If you have a lot of men, and that was how the traditional setup was, your mental makeup tells you that that's the code to operate in a corporate environment. Yeah, to be aggressive, to dress up like men, to come ahead of your time, you know, to spend long working hours whether it's needed or not needed, to socialize, to step out and drink, to accompany men to smoke. By the way, a lot of women smoke, a lot of women do not smoke, but they go down with the men and the women who smoke just because they think that's part of the corporate code. I think after a certain point in time you also understand that, you know, it's who you are and what you bring to the table that matters versus, you know, the traditional corporate codes. I also think the corporate codes are also evolving with lot of women participating in the leadership positions. Yeah, and sometimes you will always find, you know, senior leadership women in senior leadership roles who are much more balanced, and then you say, oh, she can do it. Yeah, she can carry herself in a sari and still manage it. Yeah, she can choose not to be aggressive and still be assertive. And then, you know, you try and mold yourself to say, you know, maybe I was role modeling somebody who I'm not. As senior leaders, the responsibility is also on us. Yeah, not to mimic the standard code, but to, you know, really carve out your own identity, your own space, and inspire the next generation. I was the one who would turn up at 7:30, leave office at 10:30, you know, try to socialize, engage even if I'm not needed, dress up like men, yeah, all the time. Yeah, I would rethink myself to wear a suit to the office because, you know, it's a cotton suit, and I would be branded as a lady, not talk about my kids. I think that was my initial phase of my motherhood. I think I went to office, I ran back to office after 2 months and 15 days, leaving my child in the crèche because I thought, you know, we're going to lose market share if I'm not going to be there. This is so not true. Now I aggressively advise, you know, team members under me to say, don't take a 6 months maternity break, take another 3 months and extend it to 9 months so that you have adequate rest for yourself and the child. So of course it's changing, and it's also because maybe I was role modeling the wrong kind of leadership, which was also all male, and I thought that's how it works. So when you are, you know, in the corporate world, just play by the book. But yeah, you can define your own rules. Work for a person like me, and given the background that I came from, it meant financial freedom, it meant autonomy, it meant choosing your partner, it meant living the life by your standards, etc. I think so that those were maybe the initial 10 years. Now what it means to me, I think, is also to get a more holistic perspective on life for me and my family. Yeah, I think that the fact that work gives me exposure, and exposure to things both about work and not about work, also gets me to bring the best from the world to my family. Yeah, and given my roles and the fact that I travel so much, you really get the right kind of exposure. You also understand that, you know, this professional rat race is not what it is supposed to be. The quest for money, the quest for growth, the quest for promotion is not what life is all about. So I think from that lens, it gets a very holistic perspective, and when you meet people, you also interact with them consistently. When you go out with your colleagues, you also bring a slice of their life to me. And I think over the years I've also realized it's more important to work with good quality people and good quality bosses versus, you know, only aggressive bosses who would get you promotions. So when you get a slice of their life, you also understand how do they live their individual lives, what is good to be replicated. One of my bosses introduced me to this environment of, you know, having open spaces, breathable spaces around you. I don't even think I have turned back to say thanks, but that slice of life is now so intrinsic and embedded in my entire family. Yeah, even when we hire a help, we try and ask her how engaged she is on this, because we don't want a help who says, you know, it's so difficult to maintain so many plants, machhar aate hain. We don't want a help like that. So I think it gives you a more holistic thing, and it helps you bring the very best to your family. So I think that's what it means to me now, and increasingly so. Imagine if I'm living at the same place without my designation, will I get the same respect? The answer is no. Yeah, and that bothers a lot of women. Yeah, I think they're more bothered about their designation and the implication of the designation to how society would interact with them versus what it truly means to them. Yeah, but I also think it's changed over the years, at least for me. Has it changed for everybody? I would say it has changed for 60% of the folks that's my social circle. But there are still people, you know, who would link their stature, to their identity, and they just get limited by that. In my social circle, the women who are homemakers, I think they have an equal say, because it's out of choice. It's not out of the fact that either they are not qualified or traditionally they have not worked. So they took it as a choice, so they're at peace and their family is at peace. So as I said, it's all about how women perceive themselves. So it's more about our own identity deep within, and the others are just manifestations. If you are insecure, generally it will manifest itself. You will feel shortchanged. You will feel, I do not have a say, I do not have as much of weight when I put my point of view. So yeah, there are all kinds of person, but in my circle I would say women are much more at peace. And so if today I decide to choose a life to become a homemaker, and I position myself as somebody who's very tired and who thinks she can't really struggle too much in her corporate career, she wants to drop everything and really relax. If that's how I will position myself, that's how people will take it. But if I reposition myself to say I want to take some time off to really do things which really matter to me, maybe I want to over invest and learn organic gardening. I want to spend time with my child because I think he's in a critical phase where he needs hand holding. It's a very different positioning. So it's also about how you feel about it. Yeah, my husband chose to leave his corporate designation and start up on his own. He doesn't make money. Yeah, but do I look at him differently? No, absolutely no, because he is delighted by the fact of what he's doing and how he sees that growing. And I think it's an amicable decision. I don't think women just decides one day I'm going to start working. It's an amicable decision. You say that these are the pros and cons. This is what I want to this is what will give me relative peace. So I see a lot of this, and I don't understand what is the root cause of these. But I mean, there's this joke, there's a bad joke that I used to crack, that in my office there are women who are either single by choice. There are women who are single because they decided part ways, and then there are women who are wedded but they decided never to have kids because they want a life of their own, and they're in this rat race to be seen as aggressive, whatever. One of my current brand managers, she fell apart from the husband and she said it's domestic abuse, and I wonder a woman like her can take domestic abuse, really? I mean, is that... I had another team member of mine, she said that he used to physically abuse me. I mean, I really can't relate to all this, but I think it's true. For me, I don't think I absolutely love Gurgaon. For me, it's a metro town and it's a town of opportunities. Yeah, that's what I would put it. Now, I'm just re-reflecting to your question to say, will I trade places? Will I trade Gurgaon with, say, a Bombay? Maybe no. It's a more smaller place. Okay, the tendency to get lost in a space like that is less versus in a Bombay. Your relative square feet of area to a home is larger than Bombay. The space to breathe and go out is much better. The road, the infrastructure is relatively better. Will I trade it with Bangalore? Maybe, maybe not. But yeah, so I think in my head it's more like a land of opportunities. It's comparable to any metro, give and take some bits here and there. What I truly dislike about Gurgaon, and I discuss this often with my husband, so this must be one of the more expensive real estate areas in Gurgaon, which we give so much premium to it. Yeah, but when December and January strikes and the air quality really manifests itself, I don't know, I think we were recently reading a report which says out of the top 20 most polluted cities in the world, I think 13 of them are in Delhi NCR or whatever are around. So we were just talking that we pay such a premium to stay in the most polluted part of the world. Is that fair? And where are we? How are we weighing this versus the others? I think the level of pollution is is only going higher. And I think at one point in time I used to think that people are just making a fuss about it. Yeah, but eventually every year you can feel this really hurting your eyes, blocking your noses. You can smell the pollution now. So I think I think it's it's time we do something about it. I think there's a lot that is also being done. Yeah, I'm part of this organization called I'm Gurgaon. Yeah, and it's spearheaded by a women, and I think they really try and do a lot to public spaces, to greenify them, to ensure that simple things are attended to. I think it's a consortium. I won't say it's social work, but it's more about leveraging your network to get things done. My office is right here, yeah, and we were pretty much like the first few occupants of that office. When you stand in that tall building, what you look down is a nala, yeah, like a gutter. And it's a long sort of thing. I think it goes up to Delhi is what people tell me. When I stand there now, courtesy the work that this team has done, you only see a green belt. You cannot see an iota of the fact that there's a there's a drain out there. Yeah, people are also generally more sensitive because they're like-minded people. They also think that we really need to nail and address this mess of pollution, over trafficking, not having structure, cleanliness. So I think the generic awareness is also high, but I would also say it's limited to this patch of Gurgaon. It's not very holistic. There are a couple of other downsides. I think it's also very polarized society. Yeah, if I did not have the money, if I did not have a car, it will be very difficult for me to commute. For example, my parents, I don't want to ever bring them to Gurgaon because it's a very solitary place. Yeah, this entire society it's an old society, and a lot of retired army people live here. Yeah, and courtesy some of us, I think the relative ratio of old to new is changing. But in COVID, I mean, a lot of people just felt so helpless. Yeah, they're old people, their kids are settled abroad. Do they feel safe, etc.? And as a society, we do a lot, to ensure that they are attended to. If they had COVID, we would make provisions for food, etc., etc. So I think as a society, the sensitivity is high, but it's a solitary society. Will I bring my parents to live here? No, they will have nobody to interact with. I also think the art, the cultures, the the cultural fabric of this place is also a bit weak. But I also think it's a relatively new place, so maybe 10 years down the lane we will not see the same thing. So I think the way to look at it is what are you actively doing to contribute to it versus finding faults.